Hey everyone, and welcome back to What Did I Miss?, where today I will be breaking down the Season 2 finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled Hegemony. This season has definitely been a roller coaster of different types of episodes, and after the very lighthearted musical entry last week, we got an episode on the complete opposite end of the tonal spectrum for the finale. The episode also pulled off a shocking reveal, made one of the franchise's silliest alien species look like a legitimate threat, before cutting to a classic Star Trek cliffhanger send-off. Along the way were many references to past events on this series, as well as hints towards future events, which I will go over here. But first, I want to thank you for clicking on this video, and ask that if you do enjoy it, to please hit that like button. Also, if you have been watching my videos this season, I would really appreciate it if you can make sure that you are subscribed, so you know when my future videos come out. Hegemony, the title of the episode, was first mentioned as the name of the Gorn governing body in the Star Trek Enterprise episode titled Bound. But the first appearance of a Gorn was in the classic original series episode titled Arena, which this episode acts as a prequel to in many ways. The term hegemony is used to describe the social, cultural, ideological, or economic influence exerted by a dominant group. This aptly describes the Darwinistic kill or be killed philosophy that the Gorn follow, although this entry seems to hint that they may be evolving. The episode begins with the USS Kyoga, led by Captain Pike's special lady friend Marie Battelle.
She's not my special lady, she's my f***ing lady friend.
On a planet named Parnassus Beta. This may be our first reference within this entry to the TOS episode Arena, since Parnassus is a mountain range in Greece, and the Metrons, the aliens who brought Captain Kirk face to face with a Gorn in that episode, appeared as a figure from Greek mythology on a mountain. Nurse Christine Chapel is also there, and she mentions that she is awaiting transfer to a fellowship with Dr. Roger Corby, which was mentioned in the last episode of Strange New Worlds and even led to a dance number. The character Roger Corby was first introduced on the original series episode, What Are Little Girls Made Of? In that episode, it is revealed that Dr. Corby and Nurse Chapel were once engaged. I guess this means that this fellowship that she is going on turns out to be a fellowship of the ring. Captain Battelle then speaks with Pike, who reveals that he is no longer breaking into song, referencing their adventure together in the last episode of Strange New Worlds, Subspace Rhapsody. If you have ever thought to yourself, I love knowing all the Easter eggs, but I want to know what Eric feels about this episode, well, you can hear exactly how I feel about this episode and every other episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds on my weekly podcast that I release on Mondays named WDIM News. So if you want to know what I thought of the last episode, you can check out the video I released earlier this week, and then on this Monday, I will release my review of this episode. During their conversation, Pike looks at a necklace, which is the Opelian Mariner's Keystone, which Captain Battelle gave to him in the second season episode Among the Lotus Eaters. Communications are then cut between the two, and shortly thereafter, the Enterprise receives a distress call from the Kyoga saying they are under attack from the Gorn. Captain Battelle looks up and sees a shuttle crashing and wonders if it is from her ship. We learn later that this is in fact not a shuttle from the Kyoga, and instead is from a ship named the Stardiver, and is piloted by a character we will be reintroduced to a bit later in this episode. Pike then speaks with Admiral Robert April and states that he knows that the Gorn have been a rising threat. This not only references the run-ins that the Enterprise has had with the Gorn in the first season episodes Memento Mori and All Those Who Wander, but also the last scene of the first episode this season, The Broken Circle, where it is revealed through dialogue between the two and on a map that the Gorn were becoming a greater threat. The Enterprise arrives at the system and observes the wreckage of the now destroyed USS Kyoga, which appears to have been a Constellation-class ship similar to the Enterprise. Destroying a ship that is recognizable because it is the same class as a famous ship has been done in the past by the writers on Star Trek to convey the threat of the villain to the audience, basically stating that if a ship that looks like the Enterprise can be destroyed, so can they. An example of this would be in the Deep Space Nine episode The Jem'Hadar, when a Galaxy-class ship named the Odyssey, the same class of ship as the USS Enterprise D, was destroyed by the Dominion to show the audience how dangerous a villain they were. Admiral April then tells Captain Pike that he cannot rescue the survivors on the planet due to a new demarcation line created by the Gorn. Captain Pike decides not to directly follow these orders and tells his senior staff that he will not order them to follow him, to which they all agree to anyway. This scene was very similar to the beginning of the film First Contact, in which Captain Picard defies an admiral's orders to not engage the Borg, and then he tells his crew that he will not order them to follow him, to which Data says,
I believe I speak for everyone here, sir, when I say, to hell with our orders.
While they discuss a plan, Dr. Mbenga states that he would like to be a part of the landing party that will no doubt have to fight the Gorn. Although the rest of the crew may not be aware of this, the audience learned in the second season episode Under the Cloak of War that Dr. Mbenga is a trained hand-to-hand fighter and has the most kills in this regard in the history of Starfleet. The crew devised a plan to use a shuttlecraft covered in debris to travel to the surface, which Uhura calls an old zombie movie trick. This could be referencing events from the most popular zombie story ever, The Walking Dead. which is also where the star of Star Trek Discovery, Sonequa Martin Green, first gained notoriety after playing the character Sasha for 5 seasons. On the surface, Pike and La'an see a beacon emitting from the planet that they believe is blocking their communications. La'an talks about her brother Manu, who we saw in a flashback/mind meld in the first season episode Memento Mori. It was revealed then that Manu sacrificed himself for La'an after keeping her safe from a Gorn attack. After witnessing the Gorn younglings not behaving like they had witnessed before, Pike wonders if there is another way to communicate with them without fighting. This is a very clever reference to the resolution of the TOS episode that introduced the Gorn, Arena, in which after Captain Kirk spares the life of his Gorn opponent and he is sent back to his ship, the Gorn agree to make first contact with the Federation and end hostilities. The crew on the surface then discover a survivor who is none other than a very young Montgomery Scott. Technically, this is the first appearance of the character on Strange New Worlds, but we did hear him during the first season finale, A Quality of Mercy, although he was voiced then by a different actor.
I'm an engineer, not a medical worker, Mr. Spock.
Montgomery Scott is, of course, one of the main characters from the original series and was played by James Doohan since the first episode of Star Trek that aired, Where No Man Has Gone Before. The actor continued to voice the character in 21 episodes of the original animated series, and then played him again in 7 Star Trek films and 1 episode of The Next Generation. In that episode of TNG named Relics, Scotty avoids death by storing his transporter pattern in a shuttle for decades, and in this episode of Strange New Worlds, Scotty once again uses a shuttle to avoid death, and in doing so once again meets a crew from a ship named the Enterprise. The character was also played by actor Simon Pegg in 3 other Star Trek films, but this version of the character is played by actor Matthew Wolfe, who already has a connection to Montgomery Scott that Mr. Doohan and Mr. Pegg do not. Since James Doohan is Canadian and Simon Pegg is English, Matthew Wolfe is the first actor to play Scotty, who is actually Scottish. There is also a clue very early in the episode that Scotty will be introduced later after we hear Captain Pike say this,
Parnassus Beta, everything she's got.
which is a variation of Scotty's most famous line,
I'm giving her all she's got, Captain!
Spock is then tasked with doing a spacewalk and planting rockets on the saucer section of the Kyoga. While attempting this, he not only discovers a still alive Nurse Chapel, but also a fully grown member of the Gorn. The design of the Gorn harkens back not only to their appearance from the original series, but also the series Star Trek Enterprise. The fact that they are fighting in zero gravity, which makes their movements much slower, may actually be a fun in-joke to how slow the Gorn moved during its fight with Kirk in said episode. After an attack from the Gorn, in which they do not pursue Captain Batel, it is revealed that she has been impregnated with Gorn eggs. She mentions Hemmer's sacrifice to Pike, which is referencing how the character killed himself after a similar attack in the first season episode All Those Who Wander. Spock is able to defeat the Gorn, and he and Nurse Chapel escape the ship before it crashes into the planet. Seeing the saucer section of a ship hurl towards a planet is very reminiscent of how the Enterprise D was destroyed in the film Star Trek Generations. Once the beacon is down, the Enterprise begins transporting survivors to the ship. However, after they do not receive the bulk of the survivors, it is revealed that the Gorn were actually able to beam them up first. This is revealed in the prior scene by the transporter effect that occurs, which is not the same effect or color that we have seen used by Starfleet vessels on Strange New Worlds. More Gorn ships appear and begin attacking the Enterprise, and before we can hear Captain Pike's order, we end on a cliffhanger with the only words on screen being "to be continued." Ironically, the first time Star Trek used a cliffhanger to end an episode was in the original series episode The Menagerie, which was an episode based around Captain Pike. But this is something very common with Star Trek season-ending episodes and has been used by virtually every series at one point, with the most famous use probably being the Next Generation Season 3 ending cliffhanger from the episode Best of Both Worlds.
Mr. Worf. Fire.
Well, that's everything I saw, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button right now, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?